He stood there, right in the middle of my front yard, his hands trembling, a cheap handgun pointed straight at Lisa's face. Not in some dark alley, not outside a bank or a gas station, but right next to the lavender bush Lisa had planted just last week. It was an ordinary morning, the sunlight pale and golden, birds chirping, and a guy dressed in tactical gear, playing SWAT team captain, screaming at my wife. I watched through the security camera feed while sipping my coffee and thought, no way. He was ranting about identity verification, security zones, and suspected trespassing. It was a theatrical performance, if the script had been written by someone addicted to Reddit forums and clueless about actual legal authority. Lisa stood still. No words, no movement. She wore a gray hoodie, her hair tied back neatly, a water bottle in one hand. Her posture was relaxed. Her eyes locked on the gun, not like someone being threatened, but like someone sizing up a target. I dropped my coffee mug, shoved the door open, and bolted outside, nearly tripping over the garden hose on the porch as I sprinted across the dew-soaked lawn. The grass was still patchy from its first mow, and my flip-flops were clearly not made for this scenario. But I didn't care. Lisa had a gun pointed at her. What he didn't know, and what I knew all too well, was that Lisa wasn't just a retired housewife who liked morning jogs. She was a Delta Force operative, fresh off a classified mission less than 48 hours ago. Her military duffel was still unpacked in the garage. The woman he was yelling at had coordinated hostage rescues in tropical storms, diffused bombs with her bare hands, and this morning, she just wanted to jog around the neighborhood to unwind. I knew Lisa could take him down with a twig and a hair tie, but this time she was patient. "I'm exercising," Lisa said, removing one earbud. Her voice was steady, calm, not a hint of a quiver. "Where's your ID?" he bellowed. HOA regulations require all residents to wear identification in public areas. "I don't recall that rule," she replied, still calm. "I'm ordering you to present your ID, now, or else—" Lisa tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Are you a cop?" "We're the HOA security force. Out here, our authority trumps the police." I nearly laughed out loud. Lisa didn't. She stood motionless, her shoulders slightly angled, her weight shifting back as if preparing for a move no one would see coming. Then I saw her show it. The tiniest smirk at the corner of her mouth. Subtle. A signal. I'd seen it before, during a debrief in Africa, when a supposedly untouchable mercenary lowered his weapon just because Lisa stood across from him like this. She spoke, slowly, without raising her voice. "Sir, I suggest you lower your weapon, for your own safety." He didn't listen. Big mistake. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. One fluid step, his wrist was twisted, the gun flying onto the pavement like a discarded toy. A spin, a dull thud. The man was face down on the brick path, one arm locked behind his back, his cheek pressed so hard against the ground I thought he'd leave a permanent imprint. Lisa wasn't even breathing heavily. She leaned down, whispering something in his ear. I couldn't hear it, but his face went as white as paper. The police arrived 5 minutes later. Really. 2 cars. One officer stepped out, looked at Lisa, and asked for her ID. She handed it over. He read it, looked up, his expression shifting. "Ma'am, you're free to go. No further questions. No notes. No report." Right then, a golf cart rolled up, and there she was, Karen, HOA, like she'd stepped out of a dress rehearsal for a neighborhood convention, clutching clipboards under her arm, her name tag larger than a military medal, her face scrunched like she'd just spotted moss growing in the wrong place. But no one was listening to her anymore. Lisa just brushed her hands off, walked past me, gave a slight nod, and said, "Can you make more coffee?" I nodded, silently, like a rookie taking orders from a commander, knowing I'd just witnessed something far beyond ordinary. I knew this wasn't the end. This was the opening scene, and Karen HOO had just lit a match under the wrong person. We moved here because it was quiet. Not quiet in the real estate brochure sense, with a row of trees and distant fake bird sounds from a Bluetooth speaker, but truly quiet. Far from main roads, no neighbors blasting karaoke at 10 p.m., no teens racing cars, and most importantly, the promise of a civilized, safe, family-centered community. Me, David, a cybersecurity guy who thrives in basements with strong Wi-Fi and dim lighting, was sold on this place from the first tour. Lisa seemed to agree. After years in military bases or temporary rentals, a house with a small garden, windows facing trees, and a sink that didn't leak felt luxurious. We thought we'd found paradise. We were wrong. On moving day, I noticed 4 golf carts parked outside the clubhouse, the headquarters of the Homeowners Association, or HOA. Each was painted matte black, fitted with flashing red and blue lights, and emblazoned with a giant HSD logo, Home Safety Division. I thought it was a joke. One even had a loudspeaker, with LED lights spelling out Weekend Patrol in effect, and, I swear, a cartoon gnome holding a water gun. If I weren't an adult, I'd have thought this was a theme park for kids playing counterterrorism. But no, they were serious. In our first week, we were handed a rulebook thicker than the Pentagon's operations manual. Delivering it was a woman in a khaki blazer, wearing a laminated name tag, clutching 3 clipboards, and smiling like she'd just won a lawsuit. She approached with the glee of a politician who'd secured a budget. "Hello, I'm Karen Brewster, president of the association. Just call me Karen HOA for short." I didn't need to try to remember. You couldn't forget. Karen HOA smiled as if she were blessing our existence, then handed over the rulebook like she was passing down the constitution of a feudal kingdom. I glanced at the first few lines. No clothes may be dried outdoors. Grass height must not exceed 2.75 inches. Residents must not display intimidating behavior during recreational activities. I looked up. Wait, what's that last one? Karen HOA tilted her head, her smile unwavering. You know, that intimidating energy. You'd know it when you see it. I didn't know, but Lisa nodded, calmly accepting the rulebook, thanking her, as if this were a diplomatic ritual with a nuclear-armed but unrecognized nation. It's one of the skills I've always admired in her, the ability to handle irrational people like they're unexploded ordnance. Me, with my dry humor and slight aversion to pretending, just wanted to go inside and check the internet connection. In that first week, we kept our distance. Lisa spent her time organizing the shed, setting up tool racks, and installing a full security camera system around the house. Not because she was paranoid, because it was habit. For Lisa, knowing who passed the front gate at 3 a.m. was normal. She called it standardizing the living environment. I stayed in the basement, coding, configuring servers, trying not to think about living in a community where a "speeding will result in internal fines" sign seemed reasonable. Karen HOA didn't let up. She patrolled, literally patrolled, with a clipboard, her eyes scanning from streetlights to the distance between trash cans and the curb. Every time she saw us, she'd smile like she was the patron saint of our family's existence. Once I left the trash can flush against the sidewalk instead of 6 inches away, as the rulebook demanded. The next morning, I got a warning letter. Violation number 1, improper trash placement may compromise community aesthetics. Lisa didn't comment, but that day I saw her double-check the entire camera system and install motion sensors at the gate, not out of fear. Because Lisa was starting to realize this wasn't a normal neighborhood. It was a microcosm of control, where clipboards held more power than common sense. And running that ecosystem was a woman named Karen HOA, who thought a zero-tolerance home slogan on the clubhouse wall was reasonable. I found it absurd. Lisa found it interesting. It started with an envelope. No sender listed, sealed with an HOA stamp, slipped into our mailbox at 3 a.m., per Lisa's security footage. Inside, a list of alleged violations, all things we'd never heard of. Exercising with intimidating energy, lack of ID in public areas, failure to positively engage with HSD patrols, and my favorite, eye contact deemed confrontational. Total fine, $1,470. due within 7 days, or we'd face internal enforcement per Ordinance 14B. No one knew what Ordinance 14B was. It wasn't in the rule book. Lisa flipped the fine notice over, pulled out a pen, and started taking notes. I asked, "What's the plan?" She said, "This is unchecked abuse of power, and I hate stupid abuses of power." The next day, Lisa spent the morning in the garage. Not cleaning guns, not rigging booby traps with garden tools, but cross-referencing HOA expense receipts with their internal newsletters from recent years. She started simple. Landscaping enhancements costing over $180,000 in 3 years. Records of constructing 8 fountains. Reports of upgrading lighting systems and 30 public gardens. The problem? The neighborhood had exactly 2 fountains, 4 outdated streetlights, and the 30 gardens were just wild shrubs behind trash bins. Lisa matched construction dates with footage from our home cameras and a civilian drone she used to check roof tiles after storms. Result? No one had done any work on those days. No trucks, no workers, no disturbed soil. The funds all funneled to one name, Verdant Horizon LLC, a professional landscaping company registered to a mailbox at a print shop outside the neighborhood. CEO? Fred Brewster, cousin of Captain Clipboard, the HSD officer Lisa had pinned face down on our walkway. Too easy, almost insultingly obvious. Lisa compiled everything into a file, encrypted it, and made 3 backups. 1 hard copy, 1 USB, and 1 sent directly to a federal financial auditor's office via a secure connection I'm guessing was beyond the grasp of any HOA within a 300-mile radius. She didn't say much after sending it, just sipped her tea, stared at her laptop, and said, "Now we wait." But Karen, HOA, didn't wait. The next week, 3 more fines arrived, this time with photos from HOA cameras. One showing Lisa drinking tea on our porch. Note: behavior deemed controlling and inappropriate for community spaces. I asked, "Is there a rule about how to drink tea?" Lisa replied, "There is now." Word spread. Neighbors who'd been friendly but silent started whispering, then asking, then approaching Lisa showing their own absurd fines. One got fined for waving improperly at an HSD patrol, another for hanging a non-compliant orchid pot by their door. Lisa didn't need to rally anyone. People came to her because someone in the neighborhood had finally said, "Enough." Then the call came. Not from the police, not from the city council, from the federal audit agency, confirming Lisa's submission had been received, and a preliminary investigation was underway. The next day, the HOA clubhouse shut down unexpectedly, citing internal maintenance, no visitors. The golf cart patrols stopped. No one saw Karen HOA all day. That evening, I sat with Lisa on the porch. She propped her feet up, eyes scanning her iPad, checking the neighborhood cameras. I asked, "What's next?" She sipped her tea, eyes fixed on the screen, and said, as if it were nothing, "The real fight's just begun." If there was one thing Karen HOA was better at than handing out clipboards and inventing rules, it was dramatizing everything like she was the star of a political documentary no one wanted to watch. When she learned of the federal investigation, Karen didn't back down. She didn't explain. She didn't seek legal counsel. She did the one thing she believed would reclaim control. She called an emergency neighborhood meeting, themed, "Upholding Community Security Against Internal Threats." The invitations were double-sided, stamped with the HOA seal, hand-delivered to every home. The paper was thicker than an ID card. Meeting time, Friday 7 p.m. at the clubhouse. The notice added, "Attendance mandatory. Unexcused absences will be noted." I nearly laughed, reading that. Lisa didn't. She just glanced at me and said, "She's panicking." That afternoon, the clubhouse was lit up like it was hosting the president. Golf carts were parked in neat rows like a security perimeter, their LED lights flashing red and blue, looking both ridiculous and pathetic, like a failed cosplay parade. Karen, HOA, took the podium with the gravitas of a leader declaring martial law. Her khaki blazer was decked with HOA badges. Her name tag was A4 sized, and she wore a Bluetooth headset so large I thought she was coordinating an airstrip. The room felt stifling, like everyone knew they shouldn't be here but was too curious to leave. Someone brought popcorn. Another was live streaming on Facebook. Lisa didn't attend. She sat on our porch, feet up, green tea in hand, laptop open, her face showing zero tension. I went, wearing a black t-shirt with bold white text. My wife's other ride is a Blackhawk, and I carried a notebook, not to take notes, but to make Karen worry I was drafting a class-action lawsuit. Karen began with a theatrical sigh, hand on the mic like she was about to mourn a natural disaster. "Dear residents," she started, her eyes sweeping the room like she was counting loyal followers, "we face a grave security crisis. A resident, whom I'm legally barred from naming, has engaged in threatening behavior toward our security personnel, disrupted our community's stability, and even declared war on our legitimate governance structure." No one clapped. I raised my hand, not rushed, not eager, just enough to force Karen to acknowledge me. "David Owens, resident of 14A, I said, voice steady. "I'd like to ask, what specific threatening behavior occurred?" As I recall, my wife was the one with a gun pointed at her. Karen faltered. "It's a matter of perception," she said, forcing a smile. "Per internal reports, her conduct created psychological pressure, assessed as tactically overwhelming. She was jogging, without an ID. ID isn't a legal requirement. We have the right to self-regulate for community standards. Community standards, or standards you personally define?" The room stirred. A few nodded. Karen, like a DJ losing control of the track, quickly changed topics. "We have evidence of threatening behavior. Body cam footage from the HSD will prove it." She signaled a kid in the corner who'd set up a projector. The screen lit up. A video played. Lisa jogging, intercepted by a golf cart. The footage wasn't bad quality, but the audio was cut, the frames choppy, the ending blurred. Clearly edited. Everyone saw it. I waited until the video ended, then pulled a USB from my pocket. With permission, I have the unedited version, extracted from the HSD's own device, which they forgot to password protect. Karen opened her mouth to stop me, but it was too late. A neighbor's kid had already plugged the USB into the projector, and so the original played. No cuts, no dubbed audio, no edits. Lisa jogging, earbuds in. "Ove card," speeds up. They shout. She stops, removes an earbud, a few questions. Then, the gun is raised. A collective "oh" echoed. Then, absolute silence. In 3 seconds, Lisa moves. The weapon drops. The man is face down. Lisa secures him. No wasted motion. The entire sequence was cold, clean, efficient, like a Special Forces training demo. The video ended. No one spoke. The room felt like it had fallen into a void. Karen stood frozen, her hand still on the table, clinging to reality. A woman behind me whispered, "She should be HOA president." Another man quipped, "At least she knows how to handle a real crisis." Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. "This video lacks context. It can't be judged in isolation. It's part of a smear campaign." "A smear campaign built from your own actions," I said, unflinching. "You fine people for planting flowers in the wrong pots, for not wearing IDs, for waving incorrectly. You make up fake rules, use a cosplay squad to enforce them, and when someone pushes back, you call them a threat." Another resident stood. "I got fined for hanging a team flag too big." Another. "I got a warning for leaving my porch light on past 9 p.m. Karen tried shouting for "meeting order," but that order had crumbled the moment the video started. That night, the clubhouse closed early. No press release, no explanatory email. Karen HOA had nothing left to say. I went home. Lisa was still in her spot, eyes on her tablet. I sat beside her. "You missed a spectacular meltdown." She didn't look at me, just sipped her tea. "You played the footage?" I nodded. "Reaction?" Silence, like after an explosion. Lisa gave a faint smile. Good timing, then. The neighborhood began to shift. Not loudly, not with protests. Just a change in glances, in nods as neighbors passed, in people calling Lisa by name instead of that guy's wife. Karen wasn't ousted yet, but her credibility dissolved like sugar in rain. And Lisa, she didn't need to declare anything. No open letters, no meetings, just kept on. Quiet, precise, and unrelenting. And we all knew. In this war, she held the upper hand. After the night the body cam footage went public, the HOA fell into organized silence. No new announcements, no golf cart patrols, no fine letters. Even Karen HOA vanished from the community bulletin, where she'd posted more regularly than a yogurt fermentation schedule. But Lisa didn't go quiet. Without a word, she moved to the next phase. What she called, with deadpan seriousness that made me laugh, Operation Curb Appeal. I teased, sounds like a plan to plant flowers for better sidewalks. She didn't smile. Exactly. But not to beautify homes, to clean the system. It began with flyers. Lisa designed them in one night. Simple, concise, each page a surgical strike against the HOA's opacity. No sensationalism, no insults, just facts and figures. List of unclear expenses over 3 years. Photos of actual conditions versus completed construction reports. HOA bylaws compared to state civil codes. Diagram of relationships. Who was related to whom, who signed checks, who got paid. At the top of each flyer, in bold. You're being charged for your silence. She didn't distribute them directly. She placed them in mailboxes, on door handles, tucked into morning newspapers. No words, no signature, just information. 3 days later, signs appeared. Not angry protests, not crude, not messy. They were funny, subtle, and perfectly targeted. HOA, helping oligarchy's abuse. Blink twice and you'll be fined. A sign with Karen HOA wearing a crown, clutching a clipboard, captioned, All Hail Queen Citation. And the crowd favorite, Obey or Pay. Beneath a radiation warning-like symbol, with Karen's face in the triangle. Within a week, over 20 homes displayed signs. Some pinned flyers to their own bulletin boards like trophies of truth. Karen HOA reacted as Lisa predicted. She sent a new HOA email, threatening fines for unapproved signage. This time, no one listened. Then, an unexpected ally emerged. Mrs. Hillman, a 72-year-old retired lawyer, showed up at our door with a stack of files. I'm done with this nonsense, she said. Your girl's sharp. I've read everything. Now it's my turn to pitch in. She drafted a formal petition demanding the city review the HOA's legality and financial transparency. It took 3 days to collect enough signatures. The city agreed to hold a special hearing. That day, Lisa didn't do anything flashy. No PowerPoint, no lawyer, no theatrics, just a black button-up, jeans, a manila folder, and the face of someone who knew she didn't need to win, because the truth was enough to make the guilty lose. The council was fully seated, with a few resident representatives present. Karen HOA arrived late. Oversized blazer, hair perfectly combed, and standing beside her. Captain Clipboard, like a makeshift bodyguard. Lisa was invited to speak first. She stepped up, no glances around, no posturing, no nerves. Just Lisa, strategic, clean, and sharp as a dagger. Her voice was clear, measured, no wasted words. I'd like to present the HOA's expenditures over 3 years, cross-referenced with reality via personal surveillance, of 8 reported fountains. And Semen does. Of 30 public gardens, 3 have living plants. Funds were paid to Verdant Horizon LLC, a company owned by an HOA staff relative, registered to a non-existent address. Over $180,000 was spent without valid documentation. No gasps, no applause, just utter silence. Lisa continued. She cited state civil codes, pinpointing which HOA bylaws violated what sections. coercion without resident votes, fines with no legal basis, fabricated rules beyond authorized scope. Karen, HOA, tried to interrupt. This woman has no legal expertise. Her information is one-sided. Lisa turned. Her eyes shifted. No longer the presenter. Now the operative trained to command a room like a battlefield. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "I'll clarify my background if it validates the integrity of my information." She pulled an ID from her folder. Not a standard one. It had a faint pentagon logo, a special QR code, and redacted details per security protocols. Lisa looked directly at the council. "I'm an active duty service member in a National Special Operations Unit. I cannot disclose the unit, but I'm authorized to assess and address risks related to community security and microgovernance. I've done so for 12 years, and I affirm, this HOA has been abused for power, financial fraud, and state law violations." The room felt vacuum-sealed. An older council member, likely a veteran, leaned forward, studying Lisa. Then he smiled. "I recognize that look. Welcome back, ma'am." Karen, HOA, was practically petrified. Her clipboard slipped, hitting the floor with a sharp clack in the silent room. Lisa said nothing more. She nodded, stepped down. No glance at Karen. No good luck wishes. No need. That night, the city council issued a notice temporarily suspending HOA operations pending investigation. All HOA accounts were frozen. All resident fines were nullified. An email went to every home. No further fees are due until further notice. And Lisa? She went home, kicked off her shoes, washed her face, and sat on the porch like she'd never stood at a podium. I brought out 2 teas. "You just dismantled a system without a single explosion," I said. She looked at me, eyes still calm. "I just turned on the light. They exposed themselves." Karen, HOA, didn't show up to the city council's final meeting. No one really expected her to. After the investigation, files went public, detailing financial fraud, rule manipulation, and video proof of her ordering internal enforcement with a cosplay squad in reflective vests. Any appearance would have just added to the embarrassment. The authorities ruled, the HOA was dissolved, its accounts frozen, Karen was banned from community leadership for 10 years, and restitution was ordered for overcharged fees. It hit the community like rain after a drought. I remember the next morning, the first in weeks, when the neighborhood was oddly quiet. No golf cart sirens, no fine letters in the mailbox, no suspicious glances between neighbors. And Lisa? She was up early as usual, jogging around the block, gray hoodie, earbuds, playing a podcast, and this time, no one dared ask what she was listening to. The first to wave was Mr. Simons next door. He'd spoken to me twice before, both times about fence paint colors, but that day he waved like he was saying, "Hi, thanks, and sorry for not speaking up sooner." Within 2 weeks, the neighborhood's vibe shifted noticeably. Kids played in front yards more. Team flags, state flags, even cartoon flags, flew freely without fear of citations. People left porch lights on past 10 p.m. without anonymous warning letters. One house even set up a giant fake chicken by their gate with a sign, "Still not fined, just waiting." Then came news. A resident named Tom, a retired postal worker, volunteered to lead a new resident management group. No HOA, no patrol squads. Just adults with life experience who knew the difference between community security and armed comedy. Lisa and I attended the first meeting. Tom stood at the podium, mic in hand, glasses perched as he read notes but radiating no authority. He opened his speech. "I don't have a law degree. No clipboards either, but I have one rule, and I hope you'll agree. Don't be a jerk." The room laughed, clapped. Not because it was profound, but because someone finally said something sensible. And that became the group's only rule. I saw the biggest change in Lisa. Not that she was softer or more relaxed. No. She still checked cameras, still cleaned her old radio's components, still measured the distance from gate to door by eye like a tactical drill. But for the first time since we moved here, she smiled while jogging. A small, subtle smile, but enough for me to catch on the porch camera. It was the smile of someone who'd reclaimed what they believed was right. Not out of pride, because it should have always been there. A few weeks later, we got an envelope. No return address. Inside was an invitation to a community event, No HOA Day, hosted by the self-managed resident group. They printed T-shirts, handed out mini flags, and held an outdoor party. No permits, no fines. The neighborhood felt genuinely joyful for the first time. An amateur band played on the sidewalk. Kids kicked soccer balls without being told to follow safety protocols. An elderly woman strung twinkling lights on her golf cart, now used to haul vegetables, not patrol. Tom gave a brief speech at the party. We're not perfect, but at least we don't have to pretend we're in a military zone anymore. I clinked glasses with Lisa. She smiled, saying softly, "War's over, peace secured." I nodded. And no one's issuing tickets for saying loud. We returned to normal life, but this time, real normal. Lisa planted more mint in the backyard. I upgraded our Wi-Fi with an extra mesh layer. A neighbor dropped off a basket of tomatoes, no strings or warning flyers attached. And the neighbor's cat, once fined by the HOA for excessive freedom, now it lounged in the street, lazy and safe like no one had ever hunted it. The night before the HOA's official fencing was torn down, Lisa and I sat on the porch. Gentle breeze, soft porch lights, no propaganda loudspeakers. I said, "Thank you for not backing down." Lisa set her tea down, looked at the empty street, and replied, "If no one stands up, the absurd becomes normal." I asked, "So, what now?" She smiled. "We live, like normal people, but ready if something comes up." That evening started like any other since the HOA's collapse. Clear skies, mild breeze. The neighborhood quiet in the way it always should have been. Lisa had just finished watering the new mint patch by the fence, her gardening gloves still dusted with soil. I was at the backyard grill, flipping honey-glazed chicken skewers, one hand on the tongs, the other adjusting a speaker playing soft music. It was so peaceful it felt almost unreal, like the whole neighborhood was role-playing normal. Then the black SUV appeared. No siren, no roaring engine. It glided into the street's curve with a smoothness and silence only non-civilian vehicles could manage. Its headlights were off. Its license plate didn't reflect under streetlights. I peered through the window, watching it park by the curb, unhurried, unflashy, as if its lack of noise was its own kind of message. Lisa knew it was coming. She didn't ask what I was grilling or say she'd shower like usual. She just removed her gloves, folded them, set them on the flower bed's edge, and walked to the front porch. No words, no signal, but I knew something was starting again. A new chapter, a new mission, and this time it had nothing to do with HOAs, clipboards, or grass height rules. The SUV's door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, upright, his black suit unwrinkled. Sunglasses clung to his face like they were molded on, despite the evening dark. No badges, no rank, no papers flashed. But he didn't need those to prove who he was. He was the kind of person whose mere presence screamed that big things were in motion. They didn't shake hands, no polite nods. Just a brief glance, like they'd crossed paths before and didn't need to explain. He opened the back door, pulled out a thick white envelope, sealed, no names, no addresses, just a faint string of coded numbers in the corner. Lisa took it, stood still, opened it, scanned the contents. No expression, no frown, no surprise. Just total focus, like every puzzle piece had fallen into place, and she was merely confirming what she already knew. Then she turned to me. I was still holding the tongs, the grill's flames licking the chicken's edges, but every sense I had was locked on the woman walking toward me, slowly, calmly, and with no hint of goodbye. She said nothing. No, you have to understand. No, I have to go. No promises. Just gently placed a small note on the wooden table where I usually left the morning paper. The paper was neat, her slanted handwriting clear, firm. No need for bolding because every word carried weight. I didn't open it right away. Didn't need to. She turned, walked down the steps, and got into the SUV like she was leaving for a regular workday. The vehicle pulled away, rounded the corner, and vanished like it had never been there. No exhaust, no tire squeal, just me, the porch, and a note holding something more vital than any passport. I opened it. One sentence, short. Karen was just the warm-up. This is the mission. No signature, no seal, no elaboration. And I knew. She didn't leave a promise to return because she didn't know how long she'd be gone. Not because of danger, but because this mission's scope dwarfed what we'd called normal life. I sat on the chair, staring at the street. Everything still looked suspiciously normal. The neighbor's cat was grooming on a car hood, a TV hummed next door, and string lights twinkled across the street. No one knew Lisa had left. No one saw the SUV, but I knew, and that knowledge weighed heavier than any siren in the night. The next day, I woke early, brewed tea like always, watered the garden like she would have. I checked the security cameras, all running smoothly. Lisa had left me full control with sticky notes on the garage wall. Check power source every 4 days, and camera 3 glitches at 18:45. Nothing romantic, but it was all I needed to know. Lisa had planned this departure long ago. Some neighbors whispered they'd seen a woman like Lisa at the auxiliary airport, used only for unscheduled military flights. Others said her name popped up in a classified personnel list, approved by someone no one could trace. I didn't confirm, didn't deny. I just listened quietly, went home, opened the security app, and checked the devices. The system glowed green. Connection stable. Every camera, sensor, peripheral, calibrated to the millisecond, Lisa's work. Lisa didn't just leave. She switched to operational mode. Someone asked, "Don't you think she should have stayed, after everything?" I smiled, didn't answer. Because I knew Lisa wasn't the type to pick easy missions. She was the one called when every other plan failed. When others lost their cool. When traditional systems cracked. When they needed someone who didn't crave the spotlight but could clear a battlefield without a single shot. She didn't live for titles. She lived to tackle what others wouldn't touch, and sometimes that meant leaving. Silently, with a note, and leaving a safer community behind. The time after Lisa left didn't pass like a void. It flowed like an underground stream, quiet, steady, unhurried, but always moving forward. The neighborhood stayed calm, the way it always should have been. No more clipboards, no golf cart patrols, no fines for planting flowers in the wrong shade. The days of pretending to be orderly were gone, replaced by real peace, not forced, not commanded, just normal. Tom, the retired postal worker, now the unofficial community leader, kept his promise. No new rules, no pointless meetings, no bolded name tags. Everything ran on the one principle he'd stated at the first meeting. Don't be a jerk. And strangely, it worked better than any fake surveillance system Karen HOA had built. I still watered the plants every morning, right on schedule, like a good-natured clock. The mint patch Lisa planted now sprawled across a corner of the garden, lush and fragrant. I still brewed tea for 2, an old habit, even if only one person stayed to drink. Each afternoon, I sat where Lisa used to, on the wicker chair on the porch, where she'd check security cameras on her tablet, sipping hot tea, silently watching a world most people didn't know existed. One October morning, as the air turned crisp, I heard a knock. Not the doorbell, not a frantic rap, just 3 precise, evenly spaced knocks, so exact I knew instantly it wasn't a delivery guy. I opened the door, and, as expected, there stood a man in a dark green windbreaker. No clear insignia, but a faint embossed emblem on his left shoulder. Subtle, simple, but unmistakable. U.S. Department of Defense. He said only one thing. "On behalf of the agency, we extend our thanks." Then he handed me a manila envelope, tightly sealed. No sender, no return address. On the front, Just a string of alphanumeric codes. Not for everyone, only for the right recipient. Before I could ask anything, he turned, walked to a waiting black SUV, and left as smoothly as he'd arrived. I stood there a moment, then closed the door, setting the envelope on the wooden table where Lisa used to leave her data printouts. When I opened it, inside was a single thick sheet embossed with a clear seal. No flair, no metal, no pomp, just one bolded line in the center. For exemplary citizenship and actions upholding constitutional principles in unofficial circumstances, the U.S. Department of Defense recognizes and honors personnel. L. Owens. No first name, no title, just 3 words. L. Owens. Enough for me to know. They didn't need more because they already knew enough. Attached was a small handwritten note, simple. We're proud of how she handled things. See you soon. C. No need to guess much. C could be an old commander, maybe someone behind those late-night calls, or just the one person with enough clearance to sign without a last name. I folded the paper, carefully tucking it into the drawer Lisa called her critical documents slot, where she kept training manuals, a few old black-and-white photos, and papers I once thought were just military records. Now I understood. Not all heroes need framed certificates. Some just need a locked drawer. That evening, I sat on the porch as usual. Clear sky, light breeze. Crickets hummed beyond the fence. The neighbor's garden lights stayed on. I opened the tablet, checked the security feed, not to spy, but because it felt like a piece of her still here. The interface was still Lisa's design, the grid laid out in her tactical shorthand, each position labeled with her coded notations. I stared at the screen, thinking about the past months, from a ridiculous fine, a fake gun, a wife targeted for not looking controllable, to an entire system exposed, a whole community freed, and Lisa gone, the same way she arrived, silent, precise, needing no applause. I realized then the neighborhood fight was just a tiny fragment of what Lisa faced daily. Karen, clipboards, petty rules, they were a comedic version of the larger, darker, more cunning systems she'd tackled out there. And maybe dismantling the HOA wasn't a mission, but a warm-up for what awaited her beyond the gates of an organization no one knew by its full name. Lisa didn't need accolades, no medals. She didn't post, didn't boast, never said, I did something big. But the truth was, people like Lisa don't need a stage. They just need to do what's right. And for her, peace wasn't a destination. It was the mission, and she was chosen to guard it. Where do you think Lisa's headed? The next part will unveil a mission bigger than the HOA. Like and share if you want to follow along.